Hello everyone, this is Professor Bassem Shaban, once again with a new episode of A Touch of Faith, and today we are understanding Hinduism. And with us is our guest speaker, Mr. Nitin, who is from the Hindu Society of Central Florida. So Nitin, thank you very much for joining us.
Namaste, Professor. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell us, let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about what is Hinduism.
So Hinduism is probably one of the oldest religions known to mankind. Predominantly, majority of the Indians practice this faith. It is the third largest religion in the world today. It follows Christianity and Islam. Hinduism is, the way I like to call it, both a religion as well as a way of life. So there's more to Hinduism than just sacred texts and scriptures.
Sure.
And also Hinduism, to give you a little bit more idea, there's approximately a billion Hindus now worldwide. There's around little over 2 million of them in the United States. And also Hinduism believes in one God. It's monotheistic.
Okay.
There's a misconception amongst a lot of people that there's many gods in Hinduism. But actually it's monotheistic. You can actually call Hinduism as pluralistic. There's one name, there's one God, many names, many forms. So that's the one misconception that people have. And also, the one thing that Hinduism really strongly suggests is, there is no one way of worship.
Okay.
The devotee or the person who practices this faith is free to choose from a variety of different books, a variety of different ways to worship. You may not choose to go to a temple. So there's a lot of freedom of worship.
Okay.
So that's one of the good things that I particularly like. Growing up in India, especially, that we had that freedom.
So tell us about the concept of God in Hinduism, based on what you just explained.
Right. So as we learn from our scriptures, the word for God in the scriptures is Brahman. Brahman is a formless entity. There is no. He's not a male nor a female. The oneness in the universe is what essentially is Brahman. That oneness is the substratum which underlies existence as we know in the known universe and also beyond. And that oneness is Brahman or God.
Okay.
Now that oneness essentially also flows through you, flows through me. Pretty much everything in nature that we know of, the substratum is that Brahman. So that's what is referred to as God in Hinduism. Now there is mention about different names and forms, like I said, but those are more symbolic, different expressions of God. Now, if I were to ask you to close your eyes and tell me what God is for you, you would probably have a different understanding than what I would have. So similarly, we can all have different understanding of what God is for us, but Hinduism believes in the oneness of Brahman that underlies everything.
Okay. And are those some of the names related to like Shiva and
Correct.
Things like that? Okay.
Exactly. So if you look at universe, if you look at nature out there, right, there is life that originated, life that came about, and then there is sustenance of life in the universe, and then there is dissolution or destruction. We see that in the universe. New stars are born. Stars, they live for a few million or billion years, and then they dissolve, and then there's new life after that.
Okay.
So Shiva is one of the names for the dissolution aspect of the universe. Now dissolution is not only material, dissolution can also be at the human emotional level, which is related to our ego. So that's one of the things in Hinduism that it lays a lot of emphasis on us trying to dissolve our ego, so we can get to recognize what is our true nature.
Okay.
And that true nature essentially is, your true nature is the same as mine. And that's where we have to slowly evolve. So you're right. Shiva is one of the names for
And
Brahman.
what is that true nature?
That true nature is, like I said earlier, it can be summarized as existence, because existence was, is, and will remain. It can be summarized as consciousness, which is knowledge. It can be summarized as pure bliss, a state of pure bliss. Now again, remember, bliss is different from pleasure or happiness.
Sure.
Bliss has no conditions. So this pure nature, this true nature of ours, when I say ours, I mean I include everybody,
Everyone.
is that it's called as Sat Chit Ananda, where Sat is existence, Chit is knowledge, and Ananda is pure bliss.
Can we also use the word humanity,
So again,
summarizing all of us?
that only restricts us to the human beings.
I see, okay.
But this encompasses
Everything. Got it.
including a stone and someone like a human being, which is much more evolved
Sure.
than a stone is.
Okay.
But the underlying substratum of consciousness is there in a stone as well as in a human being.
Sure. So we'll be right back with the next segment related to questions from the audience. We're back with Nitin talking about Hinduism, and at this segment we're going to get questions from the audience. So our first question, Nitin, is what is the caste system in Hinduism that we hear a lot about?
I'm really glad you asked that because that one concept of the caste system is the result why Hinduism has such a bad name. But let me explain, take a few minutes and explain to you.
Sure.
The caste system, or better known as the Varnas, V-A-R-N-A-S, the Varna system, essentially, if I were to put it in plain English, the Varna system or the caste system is a scientific classification of the human mind. That's it. That's how it is actually described to be in the scriptures. And that's how it was practiced for many years before it became perverted and abused by one or more castes in India. And then that's a result. That's the reason why Hinduism. A lot of people think of the casteism in Hinduism as something that has been notoriously abused.
Negative, yeah.
In a very negative way. Correct. So when I said scientific classification of the human mind, essentially what I'm saying is it's the classification of your personality. It's what type of personality do you have. So if I would take your example, you like to teach. You've gone to school, you've got your master's or your PhD, and then now you've decided to teach, spread knowledge, share knowledge with students. So if I were to classify your personality, that would be of that of a teacher, a professor, which you are.
Sure.
That's one of the castes as described in the classification of the Varnas. The second caste or the second type is people who are very dynamic. They want to serve their country, be a soldier in the army, or they want to be a politician, lead the country. So that's the second mindset of the classification. The third classification is that of a person who always likes to have their eye on profit. How much profit am I making?
Sure.
So people who like to have their own business, people of commerce, trade, who like to, not just earn wealth, but also make sure others earn it too.
Sure.
So that's the third classification. And the fourth classification is someone like me. I'll work for you, I'll work for a living, give me work, give me pay, and I'll do it.
Okay.
Right? So that's the fourth classification. Now, the caste system doesn't only apply to this group of people who come from India. It applies to any country. Think about the United States, right? We have you living here, who is a Brahmin, or the first caste, people who like to spread knowledge.
Sure.
The second caste could be the president, or politicians, or people who serve and protect the country.
Sure.
The third, businessmen. Fourth, people who work, the blue collar, right? So that's what the Varna system is essentially. Now, does it mean that a person who is a Brahmin, like you, who's like to teach, cannot start a business? No, of course you can. You can mix You can have personalities who can teach as well as have a business, right? So there is no demarcation that, hey, if you're a Brahmin, you can't do this or can't do that.
Sure.
Now, the reason I said that the caste system has been grossly misinterpreted by human beings is when you look back at history in India, rather I'm talking about the first century now, right? Around the first century, a group of Brahmins, the first caste, people who had the knowledge of the Vedas or the scriptures of Hinduism, they decided to do an experiment. They did what is called as inbreeding, right? So if I have a son, you have a daughter, we both Brahmins, we make sure that our children marry each other. So we don't marry people from a different caste.
Sure.
So this went on for a century. And believe it or not, it had very good results. In the second century in India, the land produced one of the most known, well-known scholars, mathematicians, people of science, astronomy, astrology, music, you name it. This was very successful.
Sure.
But then what happened is, just like in science, we know that when you do inbreeding, the potency of the seed actually starts to decay. And so, come the second century, third century, the Brahmin system, the Brahmin castes, and the warrior castes, the second caste system, they started to become weak in terms that they could not have that hold on society as they used to a few hundred years ago. And that's when Hinduism was at a real low. But then Hinduism revived itself, and we had the birth of another great scholar, who helped people then understand and shed away all these stereotypes and negativities. So that's what is essentially the caste system.
Got it.
Correct. So casteism, there is no casteism. There is caste. Classification.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Professor,
visiting us and helping us understand Hinduism a little better.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. So we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. This is Professor Bassam Shaban once again, and we're in the segment Current Events related to Hinduism. So the first story comes to us from Calcutta. Clean fuel hope for Calcutta as government to tie up with GAIL for supply. The city can expect a replacement for the most polluting of fuels, which is diesel, in the next 3 months, thanks to a Bengal government decision to enter into a joint venture with the Gas Authority of India Limited, also known as GAIL, for supply of compressed natural gas. Diesel, which environmental experts consider to be the dirtiest fossil fuels in use in automobiles, has been blamed for much of the city's pollution. Nearly 95% of public carriers in the city use diesel, and Calcutta has gradually emerged as the diesel capital of the country. Compressed natural gas will be supplied in tankers to Calcutta to replace diesel. Piped gas for homes will flow in from Jagdishpur in about 2 years. GAIL is laying the infrastructure to supply piped gas to domestic and commercial users in Bangalore. GAIL has identified where CNG supplied in trucks will be given to public vehicles. Our next story, students organize rally for eco-friendly Deepavali. Hundreds of students of Nellore Ravindra Bharathi School organized a rally to enlighten the public to celebrate eco-friendly Diwali. Diwali, or Deepavali, is a Hindu festival of lights held every year in autumn in the northern hemisphere and spring in the southern hemisphere to celebrate the victory of light over darkness and pray to Lakshmi, the goddess of fertility and prosperity. The students and staff raised slogans against air, water, sound, and environmental pollution. Students proclaimed that burning crackers would create pollution and was not safe for children. The rally's aim was to enlighten students and the public on safety and celebrating Diwali with diyas, which are oil lamps made from clay. Students suggested to celebrate the festival by lighting earthen lamps, decorating the houses, and performing pujas or prayers, and exchange sweets. But they said to not light crackers since this will cause environmental pollution. Students and staff gave safety tips, and other schools in the city of Vijayawada organized the Pavali celebrations ahead of the festival. That's our segment on current events. We'll be back with our last segment, Fun Facts. This is our last segment on fun facts related to Hinduism. Did you know Hinduism is the oldest religion in the world, dates back to 5,500 BC. There is no one founder of Hinduism. It's a way of life. Hinduism is the third largest religion in the world. Every Hindu book is written in Sanskrit, which is the oldest language in the world, known as the mother of all languages. Hinduism is not a true polytheistic religion. Hindus believe in one God, Brahma, who is manifested in thousands of other gods. It's up to each Hindu which god they worship. The ultimate goal for Hindus is to attain salvation. Rivers are viewed as sacred. Om is considered the first sound from the conscious mind and the sound that birthed the universe. The lotus flower is a special flower for Hindus. It represents goodwill, peace, prosperity, and happiness. So with that, that's our episode on understanding Hinduism. Thank you for watching. And once again, don't forget the golden rule: do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Take care. Namah Shivaya. Namah Shivaya.